Welcome back to Movie Recapped. Today I will show you a horror, drama, mystery film from 2019, titled The Room. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A couple can be seen in their car, laughing, excited to get to their new house. Once they arrive, Kate talks to her mother on the phone, telling her that they have arrived. She keeps asking her all kinds of questions that seem to annoy her. She hangs up a little upset, so Matt calls her Junebug and tells her that everything will be alright in their new home. Later, they are seen moving in and unpacking, fooling around, and having fun. Matt fixes up his studio and puts down a white canvas ready to be painted upon when he hears a noise in the hallway. Kate has begun to unload all the furniture left by the previous owners in a pile in the hallway. He comes out of his studio and tells her that he was going to do that, but she comments that once he starts painting, he would forget about everything else. Matt acts like a man-child, so Kate has to apologize for hurting his feelings. They continue to unpack, with Kate in the kitchen opening the boxes with their glasses. She goes into a cabinet and finds a dead bird inside. Meanwhile, Matt is dismantling the pile of old things and throwing them outside through the window. Suddenly, he finds an ancient-looking key. Kate is outside burying the bird when he throws a piece of furniture over and scares her. A while later, Kate is preparing her study and Matt finally reaches the wall that was behind the pile. He finds a door there with a keyhole that seems to fit the old key he found, so he goes outside and takes it out of the trash. Matt unlocks the door and calls for Kate to join him. They open up the heavy gate and it reveals an empty room inside. When Kate steps in, the lights in the house start flickering. Matt goes off to call the power company. The moment that Kate walks out of the room, the flickering stops. That night, they have some wine in front of the fireplace. She jokes with him for being a city boy that wouldn't know how to take care of their new house. The following day, both of them are in Matt's studio and she tells him that he only needs to take the first step toward painting when her phone rings. He asks her about the plans for the house. Kate takes a call from a client about a translation that she needs to do very fast. In the meantime, Matt walks into the room again. Suddenly Kate yells after him that the man from the power company has arrived. Matt takes the man to the basement to see their electrical installation. The man is shocked by what he sees there, saying it's very old. He thinks that it might be the reason for their power surges, but he hasn't seen anything like it. The man from the company gets ready to leave when he tells Matt a piece of information about the house he didn't know, that the previous owners were killed in the house. He also tells him he'll get him an estimate for the wiring as soon as he can. Matt immediately checks the information online. He finds out that the couple who previously lived there were brutally murdered in the house, dubbed by the media House of Blood. Simultaneously, Kate is working on her translation. Matt discovers that the police had a suspect for the killings, but that his identity remains unknown. He throws a cover over Kate sleeping in her study, then draws a portrait of the suspected murderer while drinking heavily. Matt goes into the room and finishes the bottle of whiskey, then says he needs another bottle. The lights flicker and one appears in front of him. The night passes and the lights continue to flicker, waking Kate up. She goes into the room looking for Matt and finds it filled with all kinds of incredible things. He shows her Van Gogh's and Cézanne's original paintings. Kate thinks he's lost it, so to convince her, Matt tells Kate to name anything she would want. She says she'd want $1,000. The light flicker again and Matt searches for the money in the room and shows it to her when he finds it. She thinks it's fake, so he tells her to ask for more, $1 million. Kate does it and the power goes down for a moment, and when it comes back on, she sees the money manifested in the room. She's afraid and says she has a bad feeling about it, but Matt manages to persuade her not to take it seriously and have some fun. They begin asking for things like champagne and more money. And in a while, Matt has already filled his studio wall with masterpieces of art and she tells him that she's quit her job. Both of them enjoy themselves with everything that they could possibly want. At one point Matt showers Kate with diamonds. Later, they're in bed and Kate is still wondering how the room works. Matt says that it doesn't matter, that they should just use it. But Kate is skeptical about what might happen. Meanwhile, they still keep asking for more stuff like spacesuits and have more fun with them, making their entire stay in the house an ongoing party. They just keep asking and the room obliges all of their wants. After some time, Kate sees the product of their wild nights and Matt wakes to a messy and chaotic house. He finds her outside on the swing and asks where the necklace that she ordered is. Kate replies that it was a figment and she could always get another. The room seems to be getting to her. Later, Matt has something in store that he wants to show Kate. He takes her to a room that he has fixed up to be a nursery. When she opens her eyes, Kate doesn't look exactly delighted. Matt tells her that they should try again because there is nothing physically wrong with either of them. She isn't willing to go through it again because she lost 2 babies already before they were born. Matt insists, but she can't be persuaded. He goes after her outside and finds her smoking, then he leaves to go on a ride. While alone in the house, Kate walks back into the nursery. The lights in the room flicker. Matt comes home and finds her in their bedroom with a baby. He freaks out, first thinking that she took somebody's baby, then realizing that she asked for it in the room. Kate tells him that there was no other way and she took a shortcut. Matt tells her that they can't keep it and that she needs to return it to the room because it's wrong. They both go inside the room. Kate holds the baby but doesn't know what to say when the baby cries, and Matt tells her to say that she wants it gone. Kate can't do it, so she gives the child to Matt. Looking and holding at the baby, he realizes that he can't do it either. He gives the baby back to Kate and runs away. That night, the baby cries and Kate tells Matt to go to the room to ask for milk. He gets it, and when he comes back, Kate is nursing the baby. Neither of them understands how that's possible. The next day, while Matt can hear Kate with the baby in the next room, he thinks about the John Doe that killed the previous owners and looks for him online. The man was imprisoned in a mental hospital. Matt takes some of the money and leaves the house to find him. He arrives at the hospital and asks the nurse to talk to him, but she tells him that the only visitors he's had in 45 years were reporters. He lies that he's a reporter too, so he could talk to him. John Doe can somehow instantly tell that he's not a reporter. Matt tells him the truth without hesitation. The man invites him to take a seat at his table and tells Matt that he's been waiting a long time for him. He asks if Matt likes the house and everything that it has to offer, but Matt just wants to know why he killed those people. The man says that it was the only way, that they should leave the house and forget about the room before it's too late. But he can see that they won't because he thinks that people like Matt are greedy and gluttonous for their entire lifetime. He sees himself as different than that, in more ways than Matt can imagine. Later, Matt is at a gas station and is asked to pay his bill, but when he reaches for the money in his pockets, he only finds dust. He speeds back home and takes more of the money out, then sees them turn into dust in front of his eyes. Next, he takes the Van Gogh painting and places it on the edge of the doorstep. The part of the painting that's on the outside of the house deteriorates rapidly and turns into dust as well. Matt brings the remaining piece back to his studio. Meanwhile, Kate is changing the baby when she sees the lights flicker again. She takes the baby and finds Matt in the room, breaking the walls apart, trying to figure out how it works. The tables have turned between the both of them. She has conceded not knowing how it works, content with the baby. But Matt needs to know. He finds more of the strange wiring behind the walls. Then he tears down the walls and the flooring in the house, finding the same thing, as well as strange panels. Kate wants to take the baby out for some fresh air, but he stops her, asking her to trust him not to go outside. She doesn't understand what he means, so she proceeds, while he waits for her at the door. Once outside, things begin happening to the child and she freaks out, calling for Matt. The baby ages rapidly as he grabs it and takes it back inside. They both look at the baby that already had turned into a boy with concern and disbelief. Later, Kate gives him a bath, then joins Matt in the den asking him what's going on. Matt tells her about John Doe. Then says that the room makes things like a giant 3D printer, under the condition to never take those things out of the house. Kate is appalled that he would call the baby a thing, but he says that it is a thing made out of flesh and bone. The child joins them and Kate goes to it, telling it that everything is alright. Sometime later, Kate is homeschooling Shane. She mentions camping and explains to the boy what it means, so he says that he wants to go camping. Kate tells Shane that he's too sick for that, just like he's too sick to open the door. She tells him that the house protects him, but Shane insists to go camping. The boy gives her attitude when he doesn't get what he wants, so he slams the door on her when she goes to pick something up outside of his room. The next day, the boy looks longingly out of the window, then goes to eat breakfast with his mom. A delivery arrives and he wants to get it, but Kate makes him sit down and she goes out to take it herself, locking the front door behind her. The delivery is for Matt, which she places in front of his studio door. He picks it up and opens it, revealing a gun. Matt is outside practicing how to shoot as the boy watches him doing it through the window. Kate keeps spending her time with the boy and playing the piano. Shane creeps up behind her and manages to get to the door without Kate noticing, sticking his hand out. When she does notice, she pulls him back inside the house and checks if anything has happened. Later, Kate is boarding up all the windows, and when Matt asks her to stop, she tells him that he can leave. Matt helps her board up the house, while Shane watches them do it from inside. That night, Kate and Shane have dinner. Everything the boy does seems to annoy her. Matt isn't doing better either. He paints manically in his studio. Kate sleeps alone and Shane comes to her room telling her that he loves her and asks to sleep in the bed. The boy says that he wants to be with them forever and asks if they want that too. Kate tells him that they do. In one of the following days, Matt is seen shooting and getting better at aiming with the gun. Shane is in his studio playing with a snow globe when it suddenly slips and shatters as Matt walks in. He asks the boy what he's doing there, prompting Shane to quickly run away. Kate walks into the studio and Shane listens to them argue through the door. Matt says that he can't come into his room, to which Kate replies that he's still just a baby. But Matt sees him only as a figment. The same night, Shane looks through the house and finds the electrical wiring in the basement. He walks into the room and the lights begin to flicker. Matt wakes up the next morning to find an intact globe next to him. He sees it's not the same one and instantly runs to Kate to ask her about it. They go to the room together and find Shane there making a snowman. The boy has created an entire forest inside the room. Kate thinks that what he did is amazing, but Matt doesn't feel the same. He drags the boy outside of the room and forbids him to go in there. Matt locks up the room as Kate comforts the boy because he doesn't understand why he's not allowed there. Kate and Matt argue over the kid going in the room, with Matt thinking about all the things Shane could imagine and manifest while he's in there. Suddenly, the phone rings, so Shane picks up the phone. It's John Doe on the other line, surprised that he hears a little boy. Matt takes hold of the phone and Kate tells Shane not to pick it up again. The boy tells her who it was, while Matt talks to the man. He asks him who asked for the boy. Kate overhears their conversation from the other phone. Matt questions John Doe about how they can stop the aging process outside of the house. The man thinks that Matt can't handle the truth. But, he still tells him. For the child to be able to leave the house, its creator would have to die. If Kate dies, then Shane would be allowed to live, love, and age like anyone else outside of the house. Matt realizes that John Doe is a figment too. The man tells him that his mom killed his dad, then forced him to kill her too so he could live. The question at present is, if Matt will kill Kate to save Shane, or kill his child to save his wife. Kate starts crying and Matt realizes that she's been listening. She takes the car and drives away. Shane spends the day alone playing and watching cartoons. Matt keeps calling Kate's cell, begging her to call him or come home. As time goes by, Matt is freaking out because Kate is gone, leaving the child to his own devices. She's in the car driving and thinking about killing herself for the boy's life. Meanwhile, Shane finally walks inside the studio. Both he and Matt have dinner together later and the kid asks him what a figment is because he overheard him saying that. Matt tells him to forget about it and eat his food. The boy says that Matt is not his real dad and wants to know where his real dad is. Matt tells him that he doesn't have any real parents, neither of them are. He even tells him that he's not a real boy and what would happen to him if he leaves the house. Shane doesn't believe him, so he grabs him and takes him to the door, telling him to see for himself. Matt tells him that he isn't a real person but an idea, so the boy runs back to his room. Realizing that he's treated the boy terribly, Matt goes to apologize to him. Shane asks him to read to him. Kate comes back home and finds them sleeping next to each other. Later, Matt joins her in the kitchen and begins a conversation about what she overheard, but she doesn't want to talk about it. They make love in the kitchen, while the boy spies on them. The next morning the child steals the keys to the house and goes out. Matt hears the door and gets up looking for him. Kate comes downstairs too and they see that he's left the house. At one point they walk into the living room and find a teenager. Shane has the gun and shoots at them. He wants to kill Matt, but Kate calms him down just enough so Matt can push her aside and jump him. The two of them struggle for the gun as Kate passes out. Later, she wakes with Matt looking over her. He tells her that Shane is dead, that he got shot when they struggled for the gun. Kate asks to see the body and he tells her that he took it outside. She goes out to look for it and Matt walks out to be with her as she grieves. Matt wakes up in the living room. He looks for Kate outside, then throughout the house, and he sees the light flicker. Matt looks for the keys to get inside, and when he doesn't find them, he begins digging through the walls. At the same time, Kate and other Matt eat lunch and she asks him what they will do about the house. She says that she can't live in the house anymore, but other Matt tells her that they don't have any money and have no jobs. If they stay, the room will provide for them. Kate becomes suspicious of his behavior, which reminds her of the same way Shane behaved. Matt crawls toward the room through the wiring in the wall. He finally pushes through and walks into the forest. Simultaneously, Kate and other Matt sit in the living room, when he tries to touch her, saying that he saw them do it. Kate pushes him away and almost figures it out, then he says, "Hi, Mom." Naturally, Kate freaks out and runs to the door. Matt is almost at the house while Kate hides from, who she has discovered to be Shane. He attacks her and rapes her, but Matt arrives at the house and breaks in. Shane looks for Matt through the house and vice versa, when Kate leaves the room she was in and runs into one of them. First, she thinks that she found the real Matt, but the second one appears. They both try to convince her that they are the real Matt when one of them calls her Junebug, but the other one just repeats it and grabs her hand. She pushes him down the stairs and they run toward the door. The room begins flickering as Shane awakens in his real form. Kate and Matt realize they are still in the room and try to get out, as Shane keeps changing it to mess with them. Matt gets an idea about how they could get out. Shane catches up to them and runs toward Matt with a knife. He kills him, then tells Kate it's okay. Suddenly, the real Kate and Matt run past the doors outside. Shane sees them and opens the door. They run through the forest and get to the door, open it and run to the house's front door. Shane storms Matt again and they fall out of the house. He wants to get back, but Kate slams and locks the door in his face. Shane begins to age and deteriorate, pleading with her to let him in until he becomes an old man and walks away. Kate runs out after him and both she and Matt follow him as he collapses and deteriorates fully. Shane turns into dust as Kate cries over him. 1 month later, Matt and Kate are staying in a hotel. He comes back to the room with coffee and she is inside freaking out over a positive pregnancy test, not letting him in. The lights in the room flicker. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.